If you are a sewist, I'm sure that you also have the struggle of a fabric stash that continues to grow with no end in sight. So today I'm going to be starting a series called Sewing My Stash, where I attempt to make a dent in my fabric stash by using a fabric that I already have rather than buying new fabric for my project. So let's go ahead and find our first fabric from my stash to use. Alright guys, so here is my stash in this closet. So it's not too bad, but there's definitely a lot of fabrics here that could be used. Most of them have been cut into. When I went through and organized these, I realized that there actually are not that many fabrics that I just bought and never used at all. There are a few, but most of them I have at least cut into. I've just realized that I am like a perpetual buy way more than I actually need for my project kind of person. So I usually have a project in mind, then I buy some fabric for it, and I do use the fabric. I just buy extra fabric, so then I have a bunch left over. So let's take a look and see what we can find today for our project. I'm thinking I want to go with some sort of dress today, so probably not any of these thicker sweatery type fabrics for today. I'll save those for another time. So let's go look through the shelves here. This shelf here looks like mostly swimsuit fabrics. In fact, I think it's pretty much all swimsuit fabrics except a few different like lining fabrics. And then this one here is some sort of jersey knit. This one here could be an option. I really like this one. This is just a soft ribbed knit. That could be a fun fall type dress. And if you see anything in here that you want me to use for a future Sewing My Stash video, you can drop that in the comments below. Let me know which of the fabrics that you would like to see me try. This is a wool, more swim fabrics. Here's some sort of, I think this one is a rayon. Another jersey knit. I have a lot of knits. I love knits. Down here we have some satins, which I bought those in high school when I wanted to make like prom dress type things, and then I never did. So those ones actually have never been cut into. Faux leather, some tulle. Let's see, over here, wool, swim fabrics, linings, jersey knits, another wool. I need to make some coats. Linen blend, a rayon. This tulle here, it's really hard to get out with one hand. This polka dotted tulle I actually got from a thrift store in, where was I? In Arizona, I believe. Actually, I'm feeling like this could be really fun to use today. This would make a really cool dress, but I do need some sort of lining to go under it or something. This one could work, potentially. Or I could make something with like this black wool fabric, just a black, like I'm thinking like a small, like a, what's the word? Like a sheath dress with the black, and then make something more voluminous with this tulle fabric. I think I'm gonna go with this one. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that out after I just put the camera down, because it is a real challenge to pull these fabrics out that are crammed into these cubbies with one hand. Alright guys, so we've got our fabric picked out, so next we need to figure out the design. So I have an idea in my head of what I want to make. So I'm here at my desk. I've got my computer here in front of me, which you cannot see, but I promise you it's there. And I'm also going to try out this graphics pad that I found in my drawer that I've had for years and just hadn't really used much. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to try it out, and we can use this to sketch the design out that I'm thinking on the computer. So let's go ahead and switch over to a screen capture now, and we will sketch out the design. Alright, so I think we got the final dress going here. So I am liking how this looks. This is kind of what I was thinking in my head. So now you guys can see what I'm thinking for this project. So next I'm going to go ahead and start figuring out my pattern for this dress. So here I'm just draping the pattern on my dress form for the basic fitted dress that's going to be underneath of the tulle dress. So I've got my underdress pattern here draped on my dress form. So I am now going to go ahead and mark in my darts. I've already marked in all the other lines on here. And then I'm going to transfer this onto pattern paper to make a paper pattern. So I only needed to drape 1/2 of my pattern because my pattern is going to be cut on the fold, so it's going to end up being symmetrical on both sides. So only needed to drape 1/2, so if that looks funny to you, that's why. But anyways, so I'm thinking what I'm going to do is transfer this pattern to pattern paper to create the pattern, and then I'm going to just draft the pattern for the overdress, the looser tulle dress, out of just on the pattern paper rather than draping it, because for that one, I'm thinking all I need to do is trace this top neckline area, because this is where it's going to be attached to the inner dress, which is this one. So I'm only going to need to trace this top neckline on both the front and the back. And then I'm just going to draw a line basically from the underarm point and just draft it kind of out like in an A-line shape. I think that's A-line, I don't know. But basically just the center front would stay straight, but I would then draft it out like this and create that flowy volume. And then I would also just cut a ruffle for the bottom edge on the tulle dress as well. So that's what I'm thinking. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and transfer this to pattern paper and we'll get started. So to transfer my pattern to pattern paper, first I just darkened all of my chalk markings on the actual fabric, and I also smoothed out all the curves and straightened up all of the straight lines with my rulers. Then I just grabbed my pattern paper, which I use exam room paper. I get it really cheap on Amazon, and it's pretty see-through, so I just laid the pattern paper over the fabric, and then I just transfer the markings with a pen onto the paper. Then once I've traced it, I'll take the fabric out from underneath of the pattern paper and I'll smooth out all my lines with my rulers. And then I will add in my 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around except for that center front seam. So the seam allowance goes around all of the edges except for the center front of the front bodice and the front skirt, as well as the center back of the back bodice and the back skirt. Then she's ready to cut out. Next, I drafted my pattern pieces for the front and the back tulle overdresses. So to do that, like I said, I traced the neckline shape of the front and subsequently also for the back, and I put the bodice and the skirt pattern pieces together so that I could figure out approximately how long I wanted my tulle overdress to be, and then I just drafted out from the arm, from the underarm area out, and then curved it in to the center front to form a nice curving hem. So these are gonna have lots of volume. Alright guys, so this is actually the pattern that I made for my tulle dress. So this one here is the front, this one is the back, and you can see just like how massive these are. It's going to be a very voluminous dress, and I was really worried it wasn't going to fit on the fabric because I did not know how much of this fabric I had when I picked it out, but I'm glad to see that there is actually what seems to be like 2.5 yards or so. It goes all the way down there. So it looks like I'm going to be able to cut the front here. Once I get the front cut, then I'll pull the rest of the fabric up and cut the back on the fold as well, right below it. And it looks like there's going to be enough fabric to be able to do that, thankfully. So yeah, I'm going to start cutting. I don't know if I'm going to have enough for my ruffle, which is very sad, but I might have to figure out something else for that, but we'll see if we can squeeze the ruffle out of this. But if not, I think I have some plain black tulle in there somewhere, so we might have to use that just for the ruffle, but we shall see. So I'm gonna get cutting. Alright guys, so I got my tulle dress cut out, but now I'm trying to cut out the underdress out of the black fabric, and it's looking like it is not going to fit, which is so sad because I thought that it would be perfect for this fabric, but it looks like in order to get it to fit, I'd have to cut off like 3 inches off the hem of the underdress. So you can see kind of the fold marks. I tried folding it up and then holding it up to myself to see how short it would be, and I think it's going to be way too short if I cut off that amount off the hem. So I think what I am going to do is actually use this red fabric, which you might remember we took a look at this in the beginning when I was picking out fabrics. I was deciding between this one and the black one, and I decided to go with the black fabric, but I think now I'm gonna have to go with the red fabric. So I think it'll look nice with the tulle. So I'm gonna cut my dress out of the red fabric, and I'm gonna put the black fabric back for another time, sadly. Alright guys, so I got all my pieces cut out, and I even cut out my 4 straps. I cut them about 30 inches long and 1 inch wide. Although, spoiler alert, they were not wide enough, so I eventually had to recut my straps a little bit wider later on. Alright, so let's get sewing. So the first thing I did was sew the front and the back of the tulle overdress together at the side seams, and I sewed them with right sides together on my serger. To be honest, there's really not much to putting together the tulle overdress, so we're already on to putting together the underdress, which is a little bit more complicated. So to start out, I marked in my darts onto my fabric, transferred the dart markings from the pattern paper onto the fabric. I needed to make sure that I transferred the dart to both sides so that we end up with 2 darts, and I did that on both the front and the back skirt pieces. Then I went ahead and sewed my darts on both the front and the back skirt pieces and pressed my darts nice and flat. Next up, I pinned the front skirt to the back skirt with right sides together along the side seams, And at this point, I also decided that I was going to use a zipper closure in the left side seam. So I placed the bodice piece above the skirt and laid the zipper next to it to determine exactly how long I would need to leave open for the zipper, and then I left another inch just for extra security and figured I would finish sewing it up a little bit more precisely later on. So basically I sewed together the entire right hand side seam and then sewed up just a couple inches along the bottom edge of the left hand side seam to leave room for my zipper. Alright, so the skirt is put together and now it is time to put together the bodice. So the first thing to do with the bodice, just like we did with the skirt, is to mark the darts in and sew the darts. So I basically marked in the darts, the 2 darts on the back bodice, sewed those, and then I marked and sewed the 4 darts on the front bodice and sewed those. I then gave everything a good pressing with my iron because I want everything laying nice and flat and looking professional. With my darts sewn, next I can sew the front to the back bodice along the right hand side seam. So I'm just going to place the front and back bodice together with right sides together and pin and sew along the right side seam. Once again, I'm leaving the left side seam open so that we can put in a zipper later. Next up, it's time to sew the bodice to the skirt. So I matched up the bottom edge of the bodice with the top edge of the skirt with right sides together, and I pinned along that waist seam, making sure that I was matching up my darts because I wanted the darts on the bodice to match up with the darts on the skirt. Next, I took it to my sewing machine and I sewed that waistline seam to attach the bodice to the skirt of the dress. With the bodice attached, now I can flip it up away from the skirt and we've basically started to form an actual dress now. So then I just took it to my iron and gave that waist seam a good pressing so that it was nice and flat. Now it's time to put in the zipper. So basically what I did was I figured out where I wanted the top of the zipper to be, which was about 1/2 inch or so below the raw edge at the underarm on that left-hand side seam. Then I walked the zipper down, lined it up with that side seam, and figured out where the bottom of the zipper would be, and I put a pin in where the bottom of the zipper would be. Then I took it to my sewing machine and I sewed that inch or so below that bottom pin with a regular straight stitch, and then I sewed everything above that bottom pin, so the rest of the side seam up towards the bodice, with a long basting stitch that I can pull out later once I have my zipper sewn in. So now that I have the side seam basted where the zipper is going to go, I also pressed my side seam open, and then I pinned the zipper into the side seam, lining up the top of the zipper about 1/2 inch below that raw edge in the underarm area. And I just pinned the zipper right down the center of that side seam, making sure that the outside of the zipper, where the zipper pull is down towards the dress, because we're going to then seam rip the seam open to reveal the zipper, and you want to be able to have the zipper pull there so that you can actually use it. And once I get the zipper pinned into the side seam, I took it to my sewing machine and I sewed in the zipper with a regular straight stitch using a zipper foot just to top stitch the zipper in place. And once the zipper was sewn in, all I had to do was turn the dress to the right side and then take out all those basting stitches pretty quickly with my seam ripper. Just being careful, of course, not to cut a hole in my actual fabric. Next, it was time to put together my straps. So basically what I did was folded the straps lengthwise with right sides together and then serged them together along the long edges to form tubes, which I assumed I would then be able to turn right sides out. However, it seems that I did not cut my straps wide enough because I was not able to turn them right sides out. So here is a nice clip of me attempting to turn my straps right sides out, both with a loop turner, with tapestry needle, and I tried all sorts of things and it was not going to work. So what I did was I went ahead and cut out 4 new straps that were 1.5 inches wide instead of 1 inch wide, and those turned beautifully and they worked out great. So I would definitely recommend not cutting your straps 1 inch wide, but instead cutting them at least 1.25 inch, but probably 1.5 inch wide. So after cutting and sewing my new wider straps, here is what they looked like. I also gave them a good press with my iron, so I've got some pretty nice looking flat straps. I'm pretty happy with these. So next what I did was I just folded under, or actually rolled under, one end of each of the straps, and then I pinned it and then sewed it in place with my sewing machine. I just want to finish one end, which is going to be the loose end of the ties. Alright guys, so a little check-in on the dress. I felt like I better try it on because I never tested out my pattern, which I normally would, but I just felt like going for it today, and actually the fit I think is great. I can't really like hold up the back to like determine, I don't know, to like get it in the right spot, but it looks like it's gonna fit pretty well. So super happy with that. I'm also happy with the length, I think. I think I'm going to probably just hem it this length. I'll just turn under my 3/4 inch hem allowance and just hem it. I think it looks great that way. I do have to admit that this fabric was a bit of a challenge to sew, and you can probably see I got some like tucks and things and a little bit of wonky stitching, especially in the zipper area. But so full disclosure, I did seam rip a few of those areas and resew them so that they looked a little better, but most of it I decided just to leave because it's gonna be under the tulle dress anyways, and we're not even gonna see all those details. So why fix them all when it looks pretty darn good, especially when it's covered with the tulle. Alright, so we're in the home stretch here. So next I needed to attach my straps and combine the tulle and the underdress together. So first I turned the underdress inside out, so it's inside out, and I pinned each of the 4 straps with the raw edge of the strap up towards the neckline of the dress, and I pinned them to each of those pointy strap attachment points so that I'll end up with 2 straps in the front and 2 straps in the back. Once I had my straps pinned on, then I turned my tulle dress so that it was also inside out, and I pinned it so that the right side of the tulle dress was matching up with the wrong side of the underdress, and I pinned the entire neckline, making sure I was lining up the seams properly and lining up the fronts and the backs together. So once again, it's a little weird, so I'm pinning the wrong side of the underdress to the right side of the tulle dress so that when I flip it, it's going to have the right side of the underdress together with the wrong side of the tulle dress. And the straps are just sandwiched in between. So then I just took this to my sewing machine and sewed along that entire neckline with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then once it was sewn, I was able to flip it right sides out, and I had pretty much a dress, and all that was left was the ruffle. Alright guys, so here is an update. I've got the tulle dress on and I just think it looks so dreamy. I'm super happy with how this is turning out. I'm a little bit sad that the side seams of the tulle dress are a little bit scrunched or like, I don't know, like ruffled up. And that was because I had the differential feed on my serger set for swimwear fabric. So when I tried to sew the tulle with it, it was scrunching up the fabric, but I fixed it for later. But for now, I think we need to figure out the ruffle and then it will be done. So I think I need to do my ruffle about 1.5 times the length of what I have around the hem. And this is like pretty long, so I think I need quite a long amount of fabric. So let's see, oh gosh. So I have some pieces here. Yeah. So that's pretty much all I have. So I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is try to just cut as many, I don't know, like 3 or 4, I don't know, 4 inches might be too wide. So I'm gonna see how many pieces like 3 inches wide that I can cut from this. I'm gonna cut as many long 3-inch wide pieces as I can and then sew them all together and see if I can get my ruffle long enough to go around the hem. If I can't, I might either cut some length off of the dress and then add that to my ruffle that I cut from this. Yeah, or my only other option is to use that black tulle that I have in there, but the black, I just don't think it'll look as good if the ruffle isn't the same fabric. So I think yes. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is cut as many 3-inch wide pieces as I can from these, and hopefully I can get enough to go around the hem of the dress. If not, I'll cut off some length and then add that onto the ruffle to get it long enough. Let's do it. So what ended up happening was I did end up cutting 3 inches off the bottom of the dress. So I had a long 3-inch wide strip from that. And then I cut a few more 3-inch wide strips from the extra fabric I had left over, sewed all those together in one big loop. Then I sewed some gathering stitches into the top of them and gathered it up and sewed it to the hem of the dress. It sounds easy, but I have to say that ruffling up all of that fabric took forever, and I kind of started to give up at one point, so my ruffles are not very even. They're definitely more dense. I don't know if that's the right word. I have more dense ruffling on one portion of the dress than other portions of the dress, but I don't think it's all that noticeable. So that's how I ended up doing the ruffle, and that is all there is to the dress. So here is the final look.